So welcome to our webinar, Cybersecurity at the 11th hour, from RED to CRA, information and discussion. And we welcome you to this webinar. And also our partners, we have here Phoenix Testlab and Bundesnetzagentur, and are very happy to have them here. And for the beginning, I have a few important points for you. All participants are muted, and for the best transmission, open locally if possible and not in a VPN connection. The presentations will be available as PDF in the end, and you can download them directly. The recording will be published in a few days, and you can also have the access to it to have a closer look afterwards. You are free to send in questions in the chat, so we are able to answer them afterwards. Before we start, I like to get some information from your side. Why are you taking part in this webinar today? Simply for interest, or are you responsible for the compliance of products in your company, or was it recommended to you to attend? So I'm happy to get some feedback from you. So yeah, most of you for interest and also some responsibles, but most are for interest here. Very welcome again. And the second question, how much experience do you have already with cybersecurity? Do you have so far not many information or information about it? Do you have a bit of experience, or would you say you know it quite well? So most of you have a bit information. That's very good. So you are quite at the best place to get more information today. Here is how we will go on today. We have 4 short information sessions for you prepared. The first one for the background and what is relevant from RED Delegated Act and CRA. We have Holger Bentje. He is online in the room. The second part is from Tobias Vogler from Phoenix Testlab. Also, Holger is also Phoenix Testlab. Tobias from Phoenix Testlab about conformity and risk assessment. We have Jonas Bünnemann for market surveillance in the third slot, and the fourth one with Aditya Madanahalli from Würth Elektronik about the practical implementation of solutions. And this will be the beginning, the information slots, and afterwards we have a time for your questions and for your practical applications. And we have the bunch of knowledge here to answer your questions. So send them in. Don't be afraid. We will answer them in the end mainly. And so stay tuned. And I like to go to the first point with Holger Bentje from Phoenix Testlab. To start, I have also one last question for you. Do you know the difference between the CRA and the RED Delegated Act? Yes, of course. Or what? There is a difference? I didn't know. And so, yeah, I see. So quite 50-50. So very good that you are here, and I would hand over to Holger to start with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Michael, and very good afternoon to everybody. My name is Holger Bentje. I'm a master specialist at Phoenix Testlab here on EMC and radio technology matters. And we established here one of the first notified bodies for radio equipment. This is more than 27 years ago, and I'm also working here for more than 27 years, and I'm still, one of my jobs is still to be the director of the notified body. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so the problem that we have, the discussion on cybersecurity has more or less been triggered by a survey that has been done by the Norwegian Consumer Council. And this one has conducted in depth the analysis of several internet connected toys. You may also say smart toys. And they find out that there's a possible lack of protection, especially of children's rights to privacy and security. The reason for this is that the smart toys are connected, of course, to the internet, and they use speakers, microphones, and sometimes also some more sensors to have an interconnection between the children who use them and the internet. On the other side of the internet is, of course, a server who answer more or less questions that they have. So these kind of devices do not record only photos, videos, but they also record your local data, the geolocational data. And they also may store data like heart rate, sleeping habits, or other biometrical data. We know this from our smartwatches. And all of them can be connected to the internet through other devices. So for instance, to phones or tablets, or also in some cases directly to the internet. So the ability of these products to record, store, and share information raises concern related to their safety, security, and privacy. Again, this was at the end of 2016, and this discussion was started at the expert group on radio equipment shortly after this report was published. Next slide, please. In 2018, the European Commission invited the member states, and they have a meeting which is called the meeting of the Telecommunication Conformity Assessment and Market Surveillance Committee, or maybe you know the word of TCAM. And here they start the discussion if they can solve this problem by using the requirements of the Radio Equipment Directive, especially the Article 3.3 of the Radio Equipment Directive, the RED. Next slide, please. So what is the Radio Equipment Directive? The Radio Equipment Directive provides the regulatory framework for radio equipment to be placed on the European market, on the local market. It concerns mandatory market access conditions of products and allow member states to do the market surveillance jobs. We have Jonas here from the Federal Network Agency, from the Bundesnetzagentur, who can give us some more information how it works. The RED is a new approach legislation. That means we have no technical requirements inside the RED. We can find the technical requirements in the specific standards. But finally, the manufacturers have to show in their technical documentation, which they have to produce, how they apply, how they fulfill the requirements of the related essential requirements. And of course, all internet connected radio equipment, including IoT devices, including wearables, including smartwatches, etc., are in the scope of the Radio Equipment Directive, including also our smart toys. Next slide, please. So the RED has some essential requirements, and as a manufacturer, you have to check if you have a risk under these requirements. If you have, for instance, a microprocessor on board of your equipment, you will produce some electromagnetic emissions. This is under the Article 3.1b of the directive. These are the EMC requirements. You also have a radio on board, otherwise you would not be on the scope of the Radio Equipment Directive. And that means you have to fulfill the Article 3.2, which technically means you have to measure frequencies, power, spurious emissions, etc., etc. And here we have the specific requirements, Article 3.3, which means these are optional requirements that has to be activated by the European Commission, and they have to be activated for specific devices. So that means the Commission has to say, okay, we have this requirement for a special kind of device. And this has been done in the sense of cybersecurity. Next slide, please. So that means these optional requirements could be activated via a delegated act. This is something which is quite common now in several directives, and it's often used now in the modern world of regulations. And the RED has the Article 3.3 with these optional requirements. And this is also the reason why the RED has been chosen to solve this problem on cybersecurity, because this regulation already exists and no new regulation must be adopted. It is also effective because the devices which do not fulfill the requirements could be banned from the European market. And this is the job of the market surveillance organizations. And it is also proportionate because we have self-assessment. That means in most cases we have self-assessment. That means the manufacturer can do the assessment themselves without any third party. There are only some special cases where a third party is required. Any delegated act under Article 3.3 will make applicable the corresponding essential requirement for specific categories of radio equipment. And we will see in the delegated act what kind of radio equipment has to be addressed. And this new requirement only applies to radio equipment that is placed on the market after the 1st of August 2025. This is in this week, and will be subject to the new essential requirements. So this is all regulated in the delegated regulation that has been published in the year 22. The number was 30. And this one specifies the essential requirements of the Radio Equipment Directive. Next slide, please. So if you look into the RED itself, you cannot find the word cybersecurity. Also, the Delegated Act does not really mention it in detail, a little bit, you might say, but in the RED you cannot find it. But you can find some articles which are used now. The first one is the Article 3.3D, and this one said the network has to be protected. And in the Delegated Act itself, it's written down that the network mentioned here is the internet. The next article is on the protection of privacy and personal data. This is the Article 3.3E. And the last one that is applicable here is the Article 3.3F, the protection against fraud. Think about you use your smartphone, for instance, to buy some articles over the internet, and then you have to pay it using, for instance, your credit card, and you have to be sure that you not have been hacked, that you maybe pay a different value that you want to pay. Next slide, please. So this is the regulation that starts in this week, but as I told you already, this is only the first part of all the regulations on cybersecurity. So that means it's a step-by-step procedure that has been started by the European Commission. The Radio Equipment Directive, the delegated regulation under the radio equipment, is the first step, and it will be followed by the second phase, which will be the Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA. And the good news is that all the work that has been done under the RED will be also used under the CRA regulations, including the standards. That means the standards that has been developed under the Radio Equipment Directive will be reused and also somehow integrated into the CRA. So that means we will get some new standards, of course, but the principle that we have learned from the harmonized standard from the EN 18031 series will also be used in the CRA standards. So what is the difference between the CRA and the RED? So first of all, the scope of the CRA will be on all digital products, including hardware and software, and not limited to radio equipment. The Radio Equipment Directive is only talking about radio equipment, but not on software. And also, the radio equipment is dealing for one specific moment. This is the moment of the initial placing of on the market of the product, where the CRA goes to the lifetime. That means also updates that come out later are part of these CRA regulations. Of course, the CRA will start later. It has been published in last year. It is already entered into force in December last year. But we have a transitional period, or better to say, we have more than transitional period. The first one is on vulnerabilities of software. And this one starts from September next year, where the main date is in December 2027, when the CRA is full applicable for all kind of products. This includes hardware products, like we have under the RED, and this includes also, and this is new under the CRA, software like any programs, any apps that will be sold, for instance. I think that's all from my side. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I would like to give the microphone back to Michael.
Yeah, Holger, thank you very much for your information and for the session. And as I already said, the questions we will answer afterwards. And now we come to the second part. Before, I have one question for you. Have you already thought about how to make your products compliant with cybersecurity according to RED 3.3? Yes, I have. No, I haven't. We don't need it. Perhaps because you do not have radio integrated, for example. So it's kind of divided. Most of you have already made your products compliant, as you say. Thank you very much. And so we come to the second part. Hello, Tobias.
Hi.
From Phoenix Testlab. He will say a few words to himself, and he will tell us about conformity and risk assessment, what's required and where are uncertainties. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So, my name is Tobias Vogler. I'm the section manager of cybersecurity at Phoenix Testlab. We are doing mostly certifications for the RED at the moment, and using the harmonized standards from the EN 18031 family. So if you have any further questions later on, use the contact details that are provided here to reach out to me. So, as Holger already said, there are the requirements from the RED, and what we discuss mostly with our customers is how you get from the essential requirements to the actual declaration of conformity, and how you do your documentation that you're compliant, basically. And I would like to give you a quick introduction of what you have to do and what you can do. So first, Holger already mentioned the essential requirements from the RED. And we are, in the case of cybersecurity, we're also talking about the Article 3.3, DEF, and the corresponding standards are the 18031-1, -2, and -3 standard. And since January, these standards are harmonized. So for most cases, like I already said, you can do your self-declaration, you can do it on your own, you don't need any notified bodies whatsoever. But there might be some use cases where you actually need the notified bodies. So normally you go from your requirements using the harmonized standard to declare your conformity. So which articles are applicable to the products is mostly the next question. So you have the essential requirements that your device does not affect the network or the operation of the network where it's connected to. Next one would be that you do not, or that you protect the personal data that's stored on your device, or that your device is using. And the last point is that you use your device, and that you develop your device that it cannot be used for fraud. Basically, fraud in case of using virtual money. So, I need to go back real quick. So, one of the most asked questions is, how can I tell that my device is connecting to the internet, or that it's affecting the internet? And that's why we did, where we created this slide to show what internet directly connected to the internet, indirectly connected to the internet means. So there are some cases, like, I hope this works. for the mobile phone. The mobile phone is normally directly connected to the internet using LTE or whatsoever. Your mobile phone might also be connected using an internet router, for example, here. And so in this case, the mobile phone would not connect directly to the internet, but indirectly. And there are some use cases where it depends on the use case, how you implemented it. If it can connect to the internet, if it can affect the internet. So for example, a Bluetooth sensor that's connected via Bluetooth to your phone. Sometimes it has possibilities to affect the internet, sometimes it doesn't. We'll come to that one later. And if you are not connected to the internet via any device and you're not using any IPv4, IPv6 communication, you're mostly not connected to the internet. So you have to describe if your device is connected or not using the risk assessment. So you're using the essential requirements from the RED or the Delegated Act, and you're describing if your device is applicable for these requirements or not. So in this case, we prepared a slide that describes a device that is not applicable. You might have a Bluetooth connection on your device, like it's described here, Bluetooth low energy. And there's a second connection, Profibus, but it's also not connected to the internet, and it's described there, and you argue why it's not connecting to the internet and cannot affect the internet. Same goes for Section E and Section F. They are both not applicable since no personal data is stored and no financial data is processed on the device. Excuse me. So in this case, if you find that you are not posing any threats to the essential requirements, then you do not need to comply to verify the compliance. There might be cases where your device is capable of communicating with the internet. In this case, for example, using a Wi-Fi interface. And if you find that there's a risk that your device is affecting the internet, you have to verify the compliance by using a harmonized standard. In this case, for Section D of the standard, using the 18031-1 standard. And yeah, so wait a minute. So in this case, for this device, this would be mainly all. You do the risk assessment. It's always the first step. And you verify the compliance using a harmonized standard. If you're finished with documenting your device, doing the risk assessment, you have to update your declaration of conformity. So, like with all the other parts of the RED, you describe your product and you describe how you verified the compliance if you have to verify the compliance using a standard. So there might be use cases where, like in the first example of the device of the risk assessment, where you do not need to verify the compliance. So in this case, you would not list it here. But if you list the harmonized standard that you're using, please use the latest version. The latest version of the 18031-X standards is from August 24. So this is basically what you have to do beforehand. This you have to do it always. If you have to assess the conformity using the 18031 standard, there are several assets that you have to have a look at. So other standards like 303.645 are basically talking about usernames and IP addresses and passwords and so on. The 18031 standard uses a different approach, so you have assets, not a specific entity, but assets. So everything that's securing your device, for example, like a password, cryptographic keys, and so on, can be defined as a security asset. And then, depending on the actual standard that you use, for example, the -1 standard is about protecting the internet. So you have network assets that have to be documented. So network assets are configurations or functions of your device that can affect how the device behaves in a network. Same goes for privacy assets with the -2 standard. There you have the security assets, which protect your device, and protect the privacy assets, which are personal information, for example. And with the -3 standard, that's basically the same for financial assets. So securing the assets, and the assets are financial assets that are used for money transactions, for example. So in these standards, there are several sections that you have to fill out, that you have to document. So for example, this is about access control. This is about resilience mechanism to be resilient against DOS attacks. And one of the sections that we discuss most with our customers is the, oh, sorry, that was the, sorry. Sorry, did press the wrong button, so this one. So this is the general equipment features of the device, where you have to list the vulnerabilities that are on your device, or that may be on your device. So, and this is about vulnerability management, and most of our customers that we talk to have the biggest problems there. So this is what you have to look at, and I would focus on sometimes you have to focus on some of these sections more than on the others. So as a conclusion, you have to do the risk assessment first. If you find that you have a risk, you have to use the EN 031 standards, so harmonized standards, to verify that you're conform. And then you declare your conformity using the harmonized standards if you're required to use a harmonized standard. So that's basically from my side.
Thank you, Tobias. Thank you very much. And with this, we will come to the next point. And I welcome Jonas here with me. And before I will introduce you, I have one question for the audience. Have you already carried out a conformity assessment for devices that you want to continue sell after 1st of August and which fall under the RED? Yes, of course I have. No, but we are in the process. Or no, but we also don't care. And be sure he will not affect you. So most of you are on the way doing it. Very nice. Thank you very much. And so we come to the next point now with Jonas. Thank you very much that you're here to tell us a bit more about the handling of legacy systems in the view of the Federal Network Agency. And here the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey. My name is Jonas Binnemann, and I'm from the Federal Network Agency in Germany, and we do the market surveillance for EMC and RED. And in the following 5 minutes, I will tell you something about the stock regulation from radio equipment which comes from outer the EEA, which means the European Economic Area, and from radio equipment which is produced in the EEA. And I think this is the most important point for you, and then I will tell you something about the risk assessment, not of the risk assessment Tobias told you. It's the risk assessment we do when we find a product which is not conform. Okay. First of all, to the radio equipment which comes from outer the EEA. The radio equipment needs to comply with the 2014-53 EU standard. The time of the market launch is crucial. For imports, the import date, which means when you complete the complete costume procedure, the date of production is not relevant. Products that completed the costume procedure after the 1st of August 2025 without conformity regarding cybersecurity. At first, radio equipment registered and released for free movement of goods. It's okay when it's before the 1st of August 2025. And yes, the specific radio equipment is released into the market for the first time. No matter when the specific radio equipment will be sold, when it's in the market, when it's in the EEA, and everything is completed, you can sell it whenever you want. And when this is not happening, you can't import the radio equipment legal anymore after the 1st of August 2025. And now to the radio equipment which is produced in the EEA. Again, the decisive factor is the time of market launch. Is the radio equipment already stored in the sales warehouse? Then everything is fine. And the date of production is only an indicator. When it's before the 1st of August 2025, that it's produced and it's maybe in the sales house, but it's only an indicator. You have a good documentation when it's produced. That will help us to follow your steps. When the radio equipment allows to be stored in sales house, it's completed and it's passed conformity assessment procedure. And after the 1st of August 2025, a new conformity assessment procedure is required. Systems that are still being produced are no longer marketable. Now to the risk assessment. It's only an example, and it's to show you how the Federal Network Agency do a risk assessment for a product which we find in the market and it's not okay. The orientation was on the EU risk assessment for product safety. You can find it on the website from the EU. Okay, first of all, you can have different scenarios for the risk assessment, but for each scenario you have a maximum of 5 steps, because the probability will multiply with each step, and then you have the total probability. The assessment of individual and overall risk. It's very important. You have an individual risk per scenario, but the total risk is the highest risk of the individual risk. That means when you have 3 times a low risk, but 1 time a high risk, the total risk is a high risk. Okay, and here you can see an example for a scenario. First of all, you check the danger of the product, the description of the danger parameters, and then you check which users are affected and the description of the affected user, and then you will multiply this to a severity that you can see what level is it. And then you have the probability that the steps towards the risk will occur, and overall there is a scenario description, and you can see here they are written down each step of the scenario. Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much, Jonas, for your presentation here. And we come now to the last presentation part. And herefore, I'd like to introduce Adi. Thank you very much that you're here. And before we start with your part, I have a question on the audience. Do your devices have wireless interfaces? If yes, which ones? Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular, or whatever? So I would like to get your feedback. I'm very interested in. So we have mostly Wi-Fi as far as I see. Yes, very, very good. Very interesting. Thank you very much for that. And now we come to Adi's part about the practical implementation of radio parts or modules. And I'd like to thank you already.
Thank you, Michael. Now that we have had a good amount of time to understand the background behind the standards and how to start with conformity, and with Tobias giving us an overview of the risk assessment part of it, I would like to go a little bit in detail about the practical implementation. So to summarize what we learned so far, what you need in order to be compliant with the upcoming standard very shortly, so to say, is first you need risk assessment documents. And then, of course, you have to make sure that you test. There is a test plan that is created out of these risk assessment documents to ensure that whatever is mentioned in the risk assessment document is actually implemented, right? And finally, you have to have the template what was shown earlier, a declaration of conformity, which will then make your device fully compliant as per the RED Article 3.3. Now the question is, how do you start with cybersecurity risk assessment? I have put this the whole process into basically answering 4 basic questions. As we have seen already in the standard, the asset is what needs to be protected, right? So it is very important to understand what we need to protect. So a list of assets is the first step. Then we have to take a look into threats. So threats are the things that we are protecting the assets from, right? And the third question is, what are we planning to achieve from doing the whole process, right? And finally, how do we achieve this? So what is the objective and what are the mechanisms that we use? If you consider a few examples here, if you answer the questions for example, you have a device that connects to the cloud. Of course, your cloud server requires some kind of credentials. So the cloud credentials become assets in this case. And the question is, what are we protecting these assets from? Let's say we are protecting these assets from remote software attacks. In that case, we are trying to achieve authenticity of is the objective here. And finally, we achieve this using a secure storage mechanism. I have a couple more examples here. Firmware of any device is an asset. Wireless link or any communication link for that case is an asset which needs to be secured using a data encryption method. So this is basically how you would start doing a cybersecurity risk assessment. I don't need to go through this again. We have had this from Tobias that we have 4 different types of assets: security assets, network assets, privacy assets, and financial assets, right? But what I would like to do now is to go a little bit in detail of how do you start recognizing your network assets, for example. So the standard defines network assets as everything that has to do with a network functionality and anything that defines this network functionality. So basically, this piece of software that implements this network functionality, and also the parameters that are used to configure this functionality. So the network assets can be then classified as confidential assets as well as sensitive assets. So sensitive assets are really the one wherein manipulation of these assets can harm the network. And confidentiality is more about preserving these assets in such a way that they do not get disclosed in the public domain. Examples here are protocol stacks that are found on your devices, client applications, server applications, and so on. An example of network function asset is here, for example, your dhcp.conf file on your Linux driver, and so on. So the question is, how do I identify all the network assets that are present in my device? So to answer this question, of course, you could do this manually. If you have, let's say, a bare metals device where you don't have any operating system on it, then it's quite straightforward to do this. But for more complex system, there are some tools available, open source tools available that you could use. I have links and examples for a couple of them here. Please feel free to take a look at this. Moving on, security assets. Again, as per standard, there are security functions and security function configurations, right? Typical examples of security functions are cryptographic libraries, SSH, VPN implementation, firewalls, and so on. Again, here the classification, you could consider public keys, certificates, and so on. They are sensitive but not confidential, which means public keys are important, but they are public, right? They can be shared over the internet. That's not the critical part. On the other hand, when it comes to passwords and private keys, they have to be somehow secured and not disclosed to the public internet. Again, here you can identify the security assets using open source tools or manually. So anything that has to do with password, anything to do with authentication, and so on is a security asset. Again, all cryptographic keys are to be considered as security assets. Moving on towards privacy assets, as per standard definition, it says that all personal data, so any data that can be related to a person. It also includes traffic data as well as location data. So if you have something like timestamped location data that can be easily connected to a person, should be considered as privacy data. And if you are collecting, recording, or structuring, storing, and doing a lot of these operations that are defined in the standard, then you have to consider them as privacy assets. And as long as you have privacy assets in your device, it is clear that you have to consider the 18031-3 standard. Again, there are open source tools available to find out if your device has privacy assets and what are these privacy assets and so on. So again here, the approach here is, again, going back to the steps. So first you find what are your assets, and then the idea is to go through the decision trees in the standard for each and every asset. So for each and every asset, you check if the protection is required. If yes, then you answer the question under various circumstances and so on. Then you end up either with a pass or a fail, or if no protection is required, then you end up with not applicable. In either case, you have to make sure that there is a proper justification, and this justification is documented. And so if you go through the process of identifying all your assets, then going through the decision trees, having proper justification, then you have documented your entire risk assessment for the 3.3e. Now coming away from the standards a little bit to understand what does this mean from engineering perspective. What do you need to implement in your end device? I have boiled down to a few points here. The first one being secure production and secure boot. So make sure that the firmware is verified with the help of a secure bootloader before it boots up. Secure storage is important if you consider having passwords and other sensitive parameters that needs to be stored on your device. Secure connection is the most important point from my perspective. So whenever there is a connection being made over the internet, it needs to be authenticated and end-to-end encrypted. So always use encryption whenever possible. Secure root of trust ensures integrity of your device and acts as basis for all further security-related mechanisms. So secure root of trust is a must for your end devices. Firmware over their update is also important. And finally, not to underestimate physical security. By physical security, I mean here there are certain circumstances where, for example, in your prototypes, you have some kind of debugging pins that are present. There are test pads that are present on your end device and easy to tap into. In this case, it would be probably clever to remove these things on your end device and make sure that there are no open interfaces that are not required on your end device. Moving on. What we as radio module manufacturers or developers do here is to make sure that we provide all or most of the necessary security features that you would require to build a secure end application. So on the radio module on itself is not an end device, but it needs to have certain mechanisms. For example, we offer state-of-the-art Wi-Fi standards using WPA3, which means that whenever your end device is equipped with such a module, then it has all the required features to connect to the internet. The same thing with Bluetooth. And I have another example here where this is also an idea for your end devices. So if you have already some legacy devices that are not really secure, you could always add on a cryptographic coprocessor, which will in the end make the end solution ready for your end application. Almost coming to the end of my presentation here. In this case, I would like to show you what it means to design in a radio module that is pre-certified, or radio modules from us, let's say. We offer these additional information that you would require anyway in order to certify your end device, right? So we have pre-filled templates for risk assessment. We also make sure that for your use cases, we can provide you with a set of network and security assets that would be present on the module or in your end device. So this will make your end risk assessment very simple and straightforward. We also have defined processes internally to make sure that we are actively in search of vulnerabilities that can be present in our products, to make sure that we provide prompt security updates, also provide you with all the information with the known product change notification process. We also conduct seminars and webinars like this to keep you up to speed with. We give you all the information beforehand, and also we have our own set of experts who can give you expert consultation at your doorstep. With this, I would like to thank you all for your attention and hand it over back to Michael.
Yeah, thank you for participating. All questions will also be answered in writing afterwards, so that you have the answer there. The presentation was already able to be downloaded, and you will also get a link to that. There is a recording. We will send the link to this one in a few days. And it would be great if you can give us a bit feedback. There is a feedback formal, or you will get it by closing the webinar tool later. And these 3 minutes would be great for us. I have to thank now Tobias, Jonas, Adi, Holger, and at the Technic, Markus and Levi. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For helping us here, and thanks for being here. We wish you all the best and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye. Thank you.